Warning, due to the nature of this series, this video will contain spoilers. You have been warned. Good morning, Chrono. It's a beautiful day outside. The sun is shining, the birds are singing, and your friend Luca is waiting for you at the Millennial Fair. I hear her and her father have some amazing new invention to show off. So rise and shine, Chrono. Go out there and have yourself some wonderful adventures. Just remember, if you ever find yourself in trouble, know that you can always rely on the kindness and loyalty of your dear friends. Have a good day, Chrono. And don't do anything I wouldn't do. There are very few people who would argue the beauty and brilliance of the JRPG classic Chrono Trigger. So, the fact that it's on my list of the best games I've ever played is not exactly a surprise. But this game to me not only showcased great gameplay, beautiful graphics for its time, and an amazing story, but it also set a new standard for how I perceive the RPG genre as a whole, which is incredible considering I played this game in 2012 and it was released in 1995. So, after revisiting this epic tale, just why do I feel that it's one of the best games I've ever played? Well, let's take a trip through time and find out. Considering this game was released initially for the Super Nintendo, I could pardon some flaws in the graphics due to the system's limitations. But here's the thing, I don't need to. Despite the game running on a 16-bit console, the creators of this game did an incredible job working with what they had. The environments have fantastic shading effects to create a depth of field in a 2D environment, and every single different setting has its own distinctive style. From the peaceful and happy kingdom in 1000 AD, to the war-torn villages in 600 AD, or even the technologically advanced 12,000 BC, each and every time period looks dramatically different and creates a different atmosphere by using visuals alone. But that's not all. The character models all show a surprising range of emotions despite being fairly small sprites. All of the members in the party have their own distinctive look, and even the NPCs vary drastically depending on the time periods. But let's not forget about the enemies and bosses. Throughout this adventure, you will have to face a steampunk dragon, a Tyrannosaurus Rex, a giant skeleton, and an enemy akin to Shodan from System Shock 2. The visuals represented in this game can showcase a grand amount of atmosphere, create epic backdrops for dramatic scenes, or even create a simple town. But, regardless of the setting, I knew that this was going to be one epic adventure from start to finish. I've brought this up in videos before, but for those who have missed it, I really don't care for turn-based combat. I just can't stand the idea of waiting patiently for your opponent to make their move while you stand by and let them hit you. This game, however, has a much more interesting way of dealing with combat. The combat is turn-based, but instead of sharing equal turns with your opponents, there is a time-based system. So, instead of politely letting the enemies attack the party, I could potentially get multiple hits in if my characters had high enough speed. This, however, works both ways, which made some of the encounters a nail-biting experience. This also forces the players to think very much on their toes when choosing proper items, attack combinations, or spells to cast. Speaking of spells, there is also a sort of rock, paper, scissors element to combat. Well, it's really more like ice, water, fire, lightning, and dark. Certain enemies and bosses can only be defeated, or at least heavily damaged, by a specific type of magic, and party members can only use one type of magic each. Well, of course with the exception of one of them. But then there's also the matter of combination moves. Each party member can use combination attacks or defensive measures with most other members. These make for some extremely powerful attacks, or can heal your party just in the nick of time. Using these combinations in conjunction with the knowledge of spells, and keeping an eye on your timing gauge, makes for a very intricate, yet easily understandable, and very fun experience. This is not only one of the best games that I've ever played, but this game also has hands down one of the greatest video game OSTs that I've ever heard. Let me tell you a story. The original composer for this game, Yasunori Mitsuda, was 22 years old when he began work on this soundtrack. For reference, that is 2 years younger than I currently am. He initially worked on this soundtrack because he wanted a raise. Square told him that if he finished the soundtrack to Chrono Trigger, then his salary might go up. Stay classy, Square. He worked so hard on this OST that he would frequently pass out only to awaken with ideas for new tracks. Plus, for his extremely hard work, he needed to be hospitalized with stomach ulcers. So, to recap, this man composed a soundtrack for a raise, did it at the age of 22, and worked so hard that he needed to be hospitalized. And you know what? I greatly appreciate his effort. If I took the time to break down and explain why I feel that each and every track in this game is downright amazing, we would be here all day. But believe me when I tell you that not only does each tune greatly match the situation and setting to which they are set, but they are all composed supremely. I'm clearly not the only one who thinks that this game has an amazing soundtrack either. There have been countless fan remixes, remakes, and renditions of the various tracks in this game. In fact, there is even an album which takes the music from Chrono Trigger, adds a beat, and puts it over tracks by Jay-Z. Seriously, it's called Chrono Jigga. It's free and it's pretty damn good. Some people may think of 16-bit music as short, repetitive, and simple music. But when I listen to the OST of this game, I think of large, sweeping orchestras, massive landscapes, and epic adventures through time and space. If the music alone can paint a perfect picture of what a video game entails, then that is when you could safely say someone has earned their raise. The story of this game. Wow. How on earth do I describe it without running out of positive adjectives? Well, let me first say this. The story is about time travel. Not only is it about time travel, but it's about jumping between 5 different time periods in the history and future of this mythical land. If that's not confusing enough, many missions require you to constantly jump between time periods in order to do something in the past that will affect the future. But the thing is, this never really gets too complicated. You are typically tasked with tackling one problem at a time, while attempting to stop an alien evil which will eventually destroy the world. This way, you can keep track of what you're supposed to be doing and still enjoy the complexity of the plot. But what amazes me the most about the time travel element is that the writers made it all make sense in the end. It's hard enough to write a time travel story without creating a time paradox. It's downright impossible to do when traveling along 5 different points on the same timeline. But this plot is so intelligently written that each change in the timeline is taken into account, and you as the player get to see the results of these changes in each future age. The individual character storylines are arguably the best part about the plot. Each character has their own backstory, personality, and challenges that they must overcome. But the best part about these characters is just how well they are written. I went over this in my review of the game, but many RPGs fall into this trap of having characters in your party that are annoying, overly angsty, or downright useless. I have never understood the appeal of such a character, as I feel that it does nothing but bog the party down and irritate the player. This game does not fall into that trap whatsoever. Oh sure, there are a few emotional moments, and the characters do lament on some of their past choices, but unlike other RPGs, the characters work together with the party to help each other overcome their problems, which are very legitimate problems, by the way, and as a result, they become stronger people. Oh, but it gets better. If you choose, you don't have to resolve almost any of their problems. Seriously, there are many endings to this game, and the New Game Plus options adds even more. Heck, you can even let the main character die and not revive him. I am dead serious. The quest to activate the Chrono trigger in order to revive him is optional. Granted, he does come back anyway, but just think of the amount of power this gives you as the player. Add in a beautiful storyline involving elements from Greek and Roman mythology, and you have a masterpiece of a narrative. A narrative that will remain in my thoughts, as will the memories of my dear friends that I've made along the way. Despite my feelings towards this game and its almost universal praise, some people have brought up a few issues that may be worth addressing. So, in the interest of fairness, I'll go over them now. Number 1. Chrono does not have any personality. This is a fair point. Every single member of your party gets an intense backstory, and they have very distinctive temperaments. Heck, even the robot and the frog get emotional resolutions to their troubles. So why is it that the main character is a silent avatar? Well, the way I see it is that this game has a similar element to the Legend of Zelda series. The main character does have a name, but at the beginning, it's up to the player to name him for themselves. Why would they do this? Because having the protagonist be silent and nameless allows for the true main character to shine. The player. So, Chrono may not have any personality of his own, but considering his actions and choices are all dictated by the person playing, this truly allows for a grand amount of immersion. Number 2. Well, here's the thing. I really couldn't find any negative reactions to this game. Well, let me rephrase that. I've been looking for hours, and I couldn't find any noteworthy criticisms aside from, "This game isn't as good as Final Fantasy." This really is a universally acclaimed and very well-loved title. Heck, many people would probably go as far as to call it the best game ever made. Whether you feel that way or not is up to you, but the lack of legitimate criticisms towards this title sure does help its case. Let me tell you a little story before I go. When I first played this game, I was suffering from depression. Things were not going very well for me in life, and I had very little motivation to even get out of bed in the morning. So, I decided to do something that I enjoy to take my mind off of my troubles: playing video games and making videos about them. I had always heard that Chrono Trigger was a great game, but my fairly apathetic stance towards JRPGs made me fairly skeptical that I'd enjoy it. When I played this game, I was treated to beautiful music, impressive visuals, interesting gameplay, and a story that left me in tears on more than one occasion. Seeing these characters struggle through their problems humanized them in a way much more efficiently than voice acting or superior graphics ever could. And as painful as it was, I could personally relate to some of their plights. But throughout all of these trials, they knew that they could rely on their friends to give them a hand and hopefully see brighter days. It could be very hard to pull through and continue moving on given their circumstances, and there were times when it seemed that all hope was lost and there was no possible way for them to emerge victorious. But the future refused to change. And that is why Chrono Trigger is one of the best games I've ever played.